Think back to the fall of 2010. The iPad had just come out, and a few months later, Apple held an event in Cupertino where they introduced a new version of their MacBook Air. At that time, the MacBook Air was a super weird computer. It had a flip-down door with one USB port in it. It was not a Mac with mainstream appeal, but that was about to change. The new 11 and 13-inch MacBook Airs were announced in the fall of 2010, and in many ways, you could argue that they were the definitive Mac of this decade. But the last few years, Apple hasn't done any updates to the MacBook Air. It has no Retina, it has no USB-C, it has old MagSafe and old keyboard. Some people like that. But we were all waiting for the MacBook Air to die. We could say, we loved you, we'll miss you, you were great while you lasted, but now it's over. And then something funny happened. Apple introduced a brand new MacBook Air for 2018. And now we get to say hello to it all over again. Maybe the most surprising thing about this new MacBook Air is it's very much like the old MacBook Air. It has all the stylings. The front of it gently curved to the curved edges. The back, these delightful little feet. The same feet we've always had on the MacBook Air, they're back. But of course, there are also a lot of changes. In many ways, this new MacBook Air is kind of like a greatest hits package of the previous 5 years of Apple laptop development. USB-C, Thunderbolt 3, no more MagSafe, Butterfly keyboard, the T2 processor, which acts as a disk controller. It's also security. It's an ARM processor that works with the Intel processor. It's basically what every Mac from now on is going to have. That's in there. And of course, there's a Retina display, which the MacBook Air has never had before. I know, it's hard to believe. One of the most striking things about the MacBook Air historically has been that silver frame around the screen. You know, it's a big bezel, it's silver, and then there's the screen right behind it, like a picture frame. Well, it's been years now that Apple has converted every single other laptop it makes into a single sheet of glass with the screen behind it. And with this new MacBook Air, that is what has happened. But Apple hasn't stopped there. The bezel itself is way smaller than the old bezel on the MacBook Air. And what Apple has done with that space is it's shrunk the footprint of the MacBook Air itself. It's a lot smaller than the old 13-inch model. In fact, it's somewhere in between the old 13-inch MacBook Air and the old 11-inch MacBook Air. It's only slightly wider than the old 11-inch model, but it is a little bit deeper. Anyway, if you're a fan of the 11-inch MacBook Air, you may be surprised at how close this new Air is to your old version. And if you loved that 13-inch MacBook Air, guess what? This one is thinner, it's lighter, it's smaller, and it's got a Retina screen. This is also the first Mac to have Touch ID without having a touch bar. It's off on the right side of the function key row. You touch it, Touch ID unlocks, you can unlock one password, you can unlock your computer with it. It's basically the same Touch ID that's in the MacBook Pro with Touch Bar, except no Touch Bar. Now let's talk processor. The MacBook Air has a processor that is lower wattage than the old MacBook Air or the 13-inch MacBook Pro that doesn't have a touch bar, which is $100 more. And you can't configure it. This is much more like an iPad in the sense that you get what you get, and that is all you get. I found it to be pretty speedy. It's way speedy than my high-end build-to-order i7 from 2014. But the bottom line is, if you need pro-level performance, you probably need the MacBook Pro, and Apple sells 3 of them, one of which costs only $100 more than the Air does. So there's a lot of MacBooks out there right now. There are 6 by my count. The old Air, the new Air, the 12-inch MacBook, the 13-inch MacBook Pro without the Touch Bar, and the 13 and 15-inch models with the Touch Bar. Where do you begin? It's kind of confusing. But there is some good news. I think you begin with the MacBook Air. This is the baseline. It is the cheapest Retina Mac laptop available at $1199. And then you ask yourself some questions. Is this what you want? Or do you want something thinner and lighter and you're willing to give up some ports and performance in order to get it? Well, the 12-inch MacBook is right there. If you need more power, you're going to have to pay for it, but it's just $100 more to get to that MacBook Escape, the 13-inch model without the Touch Bar. And you can also configure that up and spend more money and get even more powerful processors inside it. And if you want to go full on or get the 15-inch model, you can go into the MacBook Pro with Touch Bar. But I think the MacBook Air, for the vast majority of people who are just looking for a new Mac laptop, maybe they have been holding on to their old MacBook Air, just waiting for something new. This is going to be a great option. It's got Retina. It's got 2 USB 3 Thunderbolt ports. No, there's no MagSafe. Yes, it's got the new keyboard. If you don't like the new keyboard, it's kind of too bad at this point. Every new laptop Apple is making is with this keyboard. You just kind of stuck with it if you want to buy a Mac. But all in all, I think this is a computer designed to satisfy the most number of people. If you are in the market for a new Mac laptop, go to the Apple Store if you can. Look at the MacBook Air. And then decide if you need to fan out from there. But I think, at last, Apple has got some sense in their MacBook line, and it's the existence of a core product that appeals to everybody to a certain extent, and that's the new MacBook Air. Oh, turns out that the definitive Mac laptop, perhaps even the definitive Mac of this decade, is going to make it through the decade. It's relevant again. I wish Apple had come out with this system 2-3 years ago. They didn't, but it's here now, and I'm glad it is. For 6 Colors, I'm Jason.